and about 50 seconds of other basketball besides that tip and play in that game. So give me your thoughts on last night's win, Ryan. What else did you see besides the crazy tip in from last night?
I saw two guys that have been flying a little under the radar. I mean, as you said, with James Akinjo and then Terrell Brown Jr., they haven't been playing their best as of late, but they really stepped up last night against Arizona State and came out aggressive. I saw two different players that we haven't seen recently. Like Terrell Brown finished with 14 points and five rebounds and was great. He was driving to the basket, which he usually does not do. He's normally a pass-first player, and he was looking more to get his own shot, and he was hitting some crazy shots. He hit a little fade jump shot, about a 10-footer, and some others, and he was great. And James Akinjo was the star of the night. I mean, Tabellus got the game winner and was good, not how he's been playing the last few games, but I mean, James Akinjo, 24 points, 3 assists. I mean, he was 5 for 9 from deep and was just great. I mean, he's shown performances like this, but the thing that just worries me is how inconsistent of a player he is. Like, he's had 2 games over 20 points in the last 5 games, but then he's had 2 other games of 8 points and then a game with 0 against USC, which is it's just crazy. And last night was really big for him to come up with that type of performance against their biggest rival.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought up James Akinjo. I'll rave about him and talk about him a little bit later because I want to save him for another segment on our show. But yeah, I mean, what an exciting and important win for this team, right? I mean, we mentioned earlier in the week on our Hoops podcast, actually, that we do for the Daily Wildcat, just about how important, not only both of these games against ASU, but this first one in Tempe and just how important this game was to actually win this one. I mean, we're halfway through the season now, so, it's really time to, kick it into another level and make that push for that Pac-12 regular season title, which we all know Arizona wants so bad since they can't be in the Pac-12 tournament or in the March Madness tournament. So this is something that if they really, really want, they're going to have to kick it in right now. So this was a really important win. I mean, obviously, the storyline was Azuolas Tubelis, but I think there were a few other people who deserve shout outs. You mentioned James Akinjo, but I want to kind of talk about Dalen Terry a little bit in the game he had last night, and even Sean Miller said that he was a huge reason why they ended up winning the game, and he quietly had probably one of his most impressive games of the season last night. I mean, he had 13 points on 4-7 shooting, 3 of 3 from 3-point range, and he also added a block to that stat line and didn't have any turnovers. He had 0 turnovers, so. I mean, Miller said it after, that the fact that he was able to put up double digits in the scoring column and, coming off the bench was just huge because, there were a lot of players, on Arizona's side who did not have good games last night. I mean, Jordan Brown did not look very good at all last night. I mean, Christian Coloco got into foul trouble, which feels like for the 1,000th game in a row. He's just, we of course mentioned Tubelis' struggles early in the entire first half, actually, and even early in the second half, he was still struggling. So there was a lot of slack, left behind by these usual contributors, and that needed to be picked up. And I thought Terry stepped up and played really well. So shout out to him.
Yeah, and as you said, this was one of his best games, and it just wasn't one of them. This was the best game by Dalen Terry in an Arizona Wildcats uniform. It was only his second game in 14 games that he scored double-digit points, and he played 22 minutes, which isn't one of his highest so far this season, and was just very efficient. And he seemed like he was gaining a little bit of his confidence back that some might have thought he lost, as he just wasn't. It's not that he wasn't scoring a lot; he wasn't attempting a lot of shots. Like if you look at the last few games, he attempted three field goals, 4, 3, 0, 5, 2. Those are his last few games before that game. So it's just like he needs to just be taking more shots, and he has a good 3-point shooting for him. I mean, I just think the coaches need to encourage him to shoot more, and I think he'll continue getting better. I mean, yeah, he's not at what I thought he was coming into Arizona as a highly touted 4-star prospect, but I mean, not everyone develops at the same rate. I mean, we saw that I think they had over 5 4-star guys, and they're all developing at different rates. I mean, you got Tubelis, who who just is outshining everybody. I mean, with Matherin, nobody thought those two would even be that great early on, let alone in the starting lineup. So, I mean, there's still a lot of hope for Terry, and I can't wait to see how he progresses in his career.
Yeah, I think he'll be fine. I think you nailed it on the head there. I think he was a product of, I think, just not just his slow start and then just everybody else around him playing really well, right? Like, he kind of, didn't, I think he was playing well enough to be, to still start, but I think there was just guys behind him that just proved that they were playing much better than him. So I think he was kind of a product of, other people around him just playing better than him and kind of getting moved to the bench, which I can understand probably hurts your confidence a little bit. You came into this season, like you mentioned, as a 4-star prospect, probably one of the better and more exciting prospects of this class coming in for Arizona. So, to kind of have your slow start and then get moved from the starting lineup to the bench, it certainly could hurt your confidence a little bit. But like you said, everybody develops at a different rate. So, like, I think Terry is just fine. He'll be around for another couple years. I think he'll develop really nicely. I also think if Arizona brings in more forwards, I think that'll open up the opportunity for him to play more guard, which he played a lot in high school, which we kind of all expected he was going to play a little bit of point guard. But because Arizona has so many guards to choose from on this team, he kind of had no choice but to play the 3 with Matherin. So I think next year, bringing in a couple more forwards, I think could allow him to expand his role and really kind of maybe go back to the Dalen Terry that we saw in high school, which is, the point guard Dalen Terry of holding the ball in his hand, because he's 6'7", so that is a crazy matchup to have a point guard. So I'm still optimistic about Dalen Terry, but I don't think his struggles this season should be of a worry, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, the one last guy I wanted to touch on real quick was Jordan Brown, who just concerned about. I mean, he's had 1 double-digit scoring performance in his last 5 games, and his biggest streak of scoring double digits is only 3 games. And back to the start of the season, I know they played against some unranked opponents, but he got off to a really solid start, and I really envisioned him being a double-double every night type of guy, and he just hasn't been that. But it's also really his first full season, as like playing in college basketball. Period. I mean, he started Nevada, and then he UNLV, and then transferred, and then sat out, and now he's playing. So yeah, I still think he'll be here for a little longer and hopefully continue to develop in Sean Miller's program.
Yeah, I think he'll be fine too. I like his role off the bench a little bit more. I think he plays better with some of the other guys that are coming off the bench, but I think he'll be fine too, because we've seen flashes of Jordan Brown, and we know what kind of player he is off the court and in practice, right? I mean, at the very beginning of the season, I think he won the Gold Jersey Award almost every single week leading up to the start of the season. So he's a guy that's going to keep grinding and keep doing his thing. So I'm not worried about Jordan Brown either, although he did not look very good last night. None of the bigs really looked good last night. But I guess we can move on now and talk about Sean Miller a little bit. I